أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم علمنا ما ينفع وانفعنا بما علمنا وزدنا من فضلك علما. So today we will be starting with the section on adab al-ghusl min al-janaba, the etiquette of the ritual bath for the removal of janaba, which is major ritual impurity. Just a quick review from last session, that when we spoke about the wudu and all of the different supplications that were made during the wudu, again, we always keep in mind the context, that the reason why we have these things in our minds, in our hearts, and on our tongues is so that we enter into a state of presence or awareness of what it is that we're actually doing. So, this is not something that, is coming out of nowhere. And sometimes people, they might think, okay, well, none of these du'as were mentioned or were taught by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I want to start with reading just a bit or a portion from Imam al-Nawawi's Azkar, his Kitab al-Azkar min Kalam Sayyid al-Aghraq, which is a famous book by Imam al-Nawawi that talks about the different supplications that the Prophet ﷺ would make in so many different instances or situations or circumstances. So when he gets to this section on wudu, and in terms of the adhkar that are to be said in wudu, he says, and I'm just reading the translation, as for the dua to be said while washing the hands, arms, and feet during wudu, there is nothing that has been conveyed from the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The jurists, the fuqaha, they say that the supplications that have been conveyed from early Muslims, from the Salaf, are mustahab, they're recommended, to which they added some things and from which they removed some. The upshot of what they said is that after saying the name of Allah, so this is at the beginning of the wudu, one should say, Alhamdulillah, alladhi ja'ala al-ma'a tahura, that praise be to Allah who has made water pure and purifying. And then he goes on to talk about the different supplications that are said at each point in the wudu. So after rinsing them out, one should say, Allahumma asqini min hawdi nabiyyika sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ka'san la adma'u ba'dahu abada. That, oh Allah, give me a cup to drink from the pool or the house of your Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, after which I will never thirst again. And then after cleaning the nose, one should say, Allahumma la tahrimni ra'ihata na'imik wa jinanik. Oh Allah, do not deprive me of the fragrance of your bounty and of the gardens. And then after the washing of the face, one should say, Allahumma bayyid wajhi yawma tabyaddu wujuhun wa taswaddu wujuh. Oh Allah, make my face brilliant or white on the day when some faces will be whitened and some faces will be darkened or blackened. And then after washing the arms, one should say, Allahumma a'tini kitabi bi yamini, Allahumma la tu'tini kitabi bi shimali. Oh Allah, grant me my book or give me my book in my right hand and do not give me my book in my left hand. And then after wiping the head, one should say, Allahumma harram sha'ri wa bashari ala nar. وَأَظِلَّنِي تَحْتَ عَرْشِكَ يَوْمَ لَا ظِلَّ إِلَّا ظِلُّ. Oh Allah, forbid my hair and skin to the hellfire, and grant me shade beneath your throne on the day when there will be no shade except the shade that you grant. And then after wiping the ears, one says, Allahumma ja'alni min alladhina yastami'una al-qawla fayattabi'una ahsana. Oh Allah, make me of those who listen to the word and follow the best of it. And then after washing the feet, one would say, Allahumma thabbit qadamayya ala sirat. Oh Allah, grant me my feet firmness, make my feet firm on the traverse or the sirat, the bridge. And then he says, Allah. So these are very similar to what Imam al-Ghazali is mentioning. And the point of what I'm saying here is that this is all about making those connections with those actions and the realities that are to come to pass in the hereafter. And the more that we do that, the more that we are in that state of presence and understanding. I mean, that's why there are so many supplications that are made throughout. And today, much of what we're going to read through are actually supplications, dua, that the Prophet ﷺ would make or taught us. And I'll mention, the source of each of these supplications that, or for most of the supplications, that they're from the books of hadith. They're from the kutub sunnah, or the different collections and compilations of hadith. So there is a source. And so even though for when it comes to the wudu, there is nothing that's taught from the Prophet ﷺ, but at the same time, this is coming from the Salaf as-Salih, it's from the righteous generations of the early Muslims, that they wouldn't get these things just out of their own accord without having the understanding that this is something that the Prophet ﷺ would have approved. And we know there are instances in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ where companions, they made up dua on their own. And the Prophet ﷺ would ask about it. And then when the companion would reveal themselves in terms of he was the one who said it, then the Prophet ﷺ would affirm that. And he would say that, like in the dua, when the Sahaba came out of the ruku' and he said, رَبَّنَا وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ حَمْدًا كَثِيرًا طَيِّبًا مُبَارَكًا فِيهِ. That was a dua that the Sahaba, he came up with. And he said it. Now the Prophet ﷺ didn't say that you shouldn't say that, or that what you have done is something that is wrong. No, he affirmed it for him. And so the scholars, they took from that one of two things. One is that yes, there's an affirmation that's coming from the Prophet ﷺ to say that this is a supplication that is now considered as the sunnah, because the Prophet ﷺ heard it and he approved it. And so then that is perfectly acceptable and it's recommended to say that type of dua. But the other aspect or element that some scholars will have taken from this is that it's permissible to be able to come up with a dua that, so long as it's the generality of it is within the confines of the sunnah, not the specific form of it, but the generality of it, then it would be considered as permissible. It would be considered as something that is okay to do, right? And so the idea here is making the connection between the washing of these limbs. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ would have been in a state of remembrance constantly, right? That there was a state of remembrance in anything and everything that he would do, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so this would be from that generality, the generality of being in that state of dhikr, right? Being in that state of ulul albab, right? Those who have the deepest understanding, the people of core. Who are they? As Allah described them in the Quran. الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. That those who remember Allah, standing, sitting down, and on their side. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And that they reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Oh Allah, you have not created any of this in vain. Glory be to you. Save us from the punishment of the fall. So that's a state of being. It's not something that is simply limited to, saying certain things in certain places or at certain times. The way that we get to that state of being is by applying these things, is by doing the sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ in everything that when it came to these different states of being, to be in that state of awareness, and not just to say the dhikr, not just to say the dua, but to understand it, to reflect upon it, to feel, to sense the reality, to have that state of presence. That's what the point is at the end of the day, is to be present when you're doing these things, right? Presence in the dominion of Allah. We have presence, غصب عننا. We're there in terms of we don't have a choice. We're here on this earth. But the idea of having presence is that you're giving purpose to it. That it's an active state of being, that you're bringing yourself into that state of awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah is present, whether we believe in Him or not, or whether we acknowledge it or not. And that's how it is with all of creation. Allah is there. Allah sees us. Allah witnesses our every motion. He knows our every thought. He knows everything within our hearts. But whether people acknowledge it or not, whether people believe in it or not, that does not change the fact that Allah is there. And so the idea here is align ourselves with that reality. Align yourself with that reality. Allah sees, hears, knows, witnesses everything that you do. Right? Align yourself with the reality and then act according to it. Because that's the whole point of aligning ourselves with it, is so that we continually act according to that reality, seeking nothing other than Him. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so there's a lot of depth in it. And so with this, the next section, that Adab al-Ghusl min al-Janabah. So he begins by explaining that if you have entered a state of ritual impurity by having a wet dream or sexual intercourse, carry the basin of water to the wash place. Before washing anything, wash your hands 3 times. Then remove any impurities from your body. So this is beginning with understanding the fiqh behind it. And so when it comes to speaking about the janaba, or the state of major ritual impurity, that can come about from different ways. So whether it's through having a wet dream, or whether it's through intimacy with one's spouse, or whether it's through any sort of means that would bring that about, so if a person experiences an orgasm for whatever reason, then that is what necessitates the ghusl, or being in that state of major ritual impurity. Then this is something that requires a full ghusl, meaning that, and he'll explain how that is done. So he begins by saying, bring the basin to the place of where you're washing yourself, right? So traditionally, in the past, there would be a spot where a person would be washing themselves that would be away from other places of purity, right? So that a person, once the water comes onto a person, and it's in order to remove the impurities, that water in and of itself becomes impure. And so you want to ensure that you're not doing this. For example, you don't take a ghusl like in a masjid, right? For example, like in the place where people are praying, because then that's going to end up spreading the najasa. And so you take it to the place, a specified place for where you're going to wash. Now, of course, we have showers and the water drains, so that's the specific place for doing the ghusl. Now, it mentions wash your hands 3 times before washing anything. So the idea is remove any impurity from your hands before you actually use the basin. Right? Now, again, this is speaking about when a person would have a basin, that they would be scooping the water out of it. Okay, that doesn't apply to us in our times for the most part, because we have faucets and showers and whatnot, where the water comes out automatically. But this was something to be aware of, so that a person does not end up, has a basin or a bucket of water that they need to wash themselves in, and then they have najasa on their hand. If they stick their hand in the water, then the water becomes najis. You're no longer able to use it, right? So that's something that, in order to be able to understand the basic jurisprudence of it. So then you begin by removing the impurities from your body, and that means that the person washes their private parts. And so this is now the sunnah of ghusl, how the Prophet ﷺ taught us how to perform the ghusl. The first thing is to remove the najasa, and that begins by washing the private parts, both the front and the back. And so that's the aspect of then remove any impurities from your body. Then, the next step, perform the regular ablution, the wudu, for the prayer as described above, with all the supplications and prayers, postponing only the washing of the feet, so as not to waste water. So here, again, he's bringing the person back to the fact of having that state of awareness. Make the du'as. Be aware of what it is that you're doing, having that state of presence of mind of your act of worship. Because realize, you're not just washing yourself for the purpose of cooling yourself off, or for the purpose of making yourself clean or smelling good, right? You're doing an act of worship. You are removing from yourself the state of ritual impurity, major or minor, in order for you to be able to perform worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that act in and of itself is an act of worship. By preparing yourself to do acts of worship, this is what is required. And so be aware, this is what you're doing, right? It's not like you're just washing your face in the morning after waking up to remove, the whatever is in your eyes or whatnot. No, you're doing this as an act of worship. Now, that might be one of the effects that come out of it. Is that, yeah, sure, you're washing, whatever is on your face or in your eyes when you wake up in the morning. But be aware of the purpose of why you're doing this. And so then he says, do the wudu. So you do the wudu accordingly, as was taught from before. And here he says, don't wash the feet yet. Save the washing of the feet to the very end. Now that is in cases where the water is not draining somewhere. So if you're in a spot, the way that the Prophet ﷺ would have done the ghusl is he would have done everything, but then he would have moved from the spot that he was doing his ghusl in and then washed his feet. Because the water that is accruing during the process of the wudu, right, that it would contain impurities. Not for the Prophet ﷺ. He made that clear. That doesn't apply to him. He's teaching us. Right? So for us, it would have impurities in it, and that's something that would need. So it's not to wash the feet twice, because if you wash the feet once and then you're still doing the ghusl, then you'd end up having to wash your feet again. So this wouldn't necessarily apply when you're in the shower because the water is draining. So you can wash your feet right away. That's the thing. And you can wash your feet right away, finish your wudu, and then do the rest of the ghusl. Then he goes on to say, now pour water over the right side of your body 3 times, making the intention of lifting the state of impurity. So that intention in the Shafi'i method is necessary in terms of lifting the state of janaba, right? That you're removing the state of major ritual impurity. Then pour water over the left side of your body 3 times. Then pour water over your head 3 times. Rub the front and back of your body. Use your fingers to make the water penetrate the hair of your head and make sure the water gets into the folds of the body, as well as the roots of the hair, both thick and thin. And avoid touching your male organ after the ablution. If your hand comes in contact with it, repeat the ablution. Okay, so here a number of rulings are being presented here. Now, first of all, the way that the Prophet taught the ghusl, that there are different narrations in terms of whether the head is washed first, and then the right side of the body, and then the left side of the body. So you'll see that in some of the books of fiqh, that it will say, after washing the private parts, you make your wudu, and then you start by putting the water on the head, and then you wash the head first, and then you wash the right side of the body 3 times, and then the left side of the body 3 times. Now here the order is slightly different, but what is the rukn or the arkan? What are the pillars of doing ghusl? The pillars of doing ghusl are 2 things. One is the intention, and 2 is to ensure that the water reaches every part of the body that the water needs to reach, which means everything. Those are the 2 rukns of ghusl. So if a person does that, then they have performed the ghusl, and the major ritual impurity, that state, has been removed. In terms of the other aspects of doing the wudu, or in terms of washing 3 times, right? Or in terms of the order, right? Whether you start with the head or the right part and then the left part, those are all considered as sunnahs. They're not obligatory aspects of the ghusl, right? Now, there's a difference here between the Hanafi madhab and the Shafi'i madhab. So there's a note in the book where when it says that if your hands come in contact with the male organ, then you repeat the ablution. So this is because that's one of the nullifiers of wudu in the Shafi'i method, is touching one's private part. So the person, and the touching of it would have to be the palm of their hand, not the back of it. So when you take your hands and you put them together like this, whatever surfaces touch, okay, on the skin, by doing that, if that surface, either hand, touches the male part or the female, the organ, then your wudu is nullified, okay? But say, for example, if it's the back of the hand that touches it, then your wudu is nullified. That's from the Shafi'i. In the Hanafi, it does not apply. So for the Hanafis, the touching of the private part does not nullify the wudu or the ablution. Now it goes on to say then, we're down here. In all of this, the things that are obligatory are the intention, removing impurity, and encompassing the whole body while washing, right? And so with the encompassing of the whole body while washing, that's what actually removes the impurity. So that's why you'll see some books of fiqh that it mentions that those are the 2 rukns. But the washing of the body includes the removal of the impurities, right? So if you wash the body and then the impurities aren't removed, they're still there. No, you continue washing until the impurities are gone. But it mentions here the intention. In the Hanafi madhab, the intention for ghusl is a sunnah. It is not a rukn. It is not an obligation. And so that's why if somebody, for example, were to jump into a pool and they come out of that pool, that they would consider to have purified themselves, made wudu with the ghusl, just by jumping into a pool, even without an intention, right? Because the water reaches all parts of their bodies, and so they're considered as pure, right? In the Shafi'i madhab, which is what Imam al-Ghazali is going through here, that would not work. You would have to have the intention, but at the same time, you also have to do the proper order. So for wudu, you have to start with your face, and then do your arms, and then wipe your head, and then wash your feet. It has to be in that order. If it's outside of that order, then your wudu is not valid. You have to go back and perform the wudu in that particular order. Okay. With the ghusl, the order doesn't matter. Okay, with the ghusl, the two things that are required are the intention in the Shafi'i method, and then water gets to the whole part of the body, thick hair, thin hair, whatever, water has to reach the skin, right, all throughout. And that's why it talks about the folds of the body, wherever there are folds, to ensure that water gets in. So those are the two aspects that are obligatory, and of course, he mentions here as well the removing of the najasa, which comes along with the washing. The obligatory parts of the ablution. Now here he's talking about the arkan of the wudu, washing the face, washing the arms, including the elbows, wiping part of the head. So in the Shafi'i madhab, just a few hairs is sufficient. In the Hanafi, you need to have at least a quarter of the head. Whereas in the Shafi'i madhab, just to wash a few parts of the hair would be sufficient. To wiping it, not washing, but wiping. And then washing the feet, including the ankles. Each of these actions are to be carried out one time. So that's the obligatory aspect. You do it once. And with the intention, that comes at the very beginning, right? And in the proper. And so that's what he mentions here. The rest of the actions in the wudu and the ritual bath are confirmed sunnah. Their benefits many and their reward great. So now here what he's doing is he's bringing you back into that state of awareness. That, when you learn the fiqh doesn't talk about the virtues of wudu, doesn't talk about the benefits, it doesn't talk about the reward. Right? But this is something that Imam al-Ghazali is doing so that, again, bring yourself into that state of awareness of the virtues and the bounties and the blessings that come from when you make these actions for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever dismisses them loses out. In fact, he puts his obligatory acts at risk for the voluntary acts make up for the deficiencies in the obligatory. Right? So this is a way in terms of, just as he had mentioned at the very beginning that how the obligatory acts are capital, and then the non-obligatory acts or the voluntary acts are the profit, right? That's our investment, so to speak. And so he's saying that, if you just have the obligatory parts and you fulfill that, what if there are deficiencies in it, right? That, you're doing things, but there might be deficiencies in it. What's going to help make up for that or buttress that, right? Because sometimes people, one time a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, okay, well, what are the requirements of Islam? And the Prophet ﷺ told him, pray 5 times a day, shahada, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, pray 5 times a day, fast, pay your zakat, perform your hajj. So the man, he asked, if that's all that I do, will I make it into paradise? And he said, yes, but in salah, if you're truthful in terms of what you actually do it, right? Because a lot of times people, if they want to keep themselves to the bare minimum, they okay, that's all I'm going to do. That's all I have to do. Then that's all I'm going to do. Then that should be sufficient. All right, it would be sufficient if and only if you're able to fulfill all of that without any shortcomings, without missing something. Well, what happens if you miss something? Even inadvertently, well, there's a deficiency. It falls short. And so based on that, there's a hadith that was mentioned, previously, that the one who, fulfills their obligations, that's what you use to gain nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then you keep drawing nearer to Him by doing the voluntary acts. And there are other hadiths that talk about how the voluntary, the nawafil, the sunnah, they actually make up for the deficiencies in terms of, for example, prayer. Right? that, okay, if you have shortcomings in your farm, then Allah is going to look at, okay, well, where are the sunnah, where are the voluntary acts that you did that to help make up for those deficiencies. So that's what he's referring to here in this regard. And so the idea here is do your best, right? Like put in the best effort, do your wudu, do your ghusl in the best of possible way. That is in accordance with the sunnah of our Prophet. And because the rewards are great, their benefits are many, and if you decide not to do that, you're losing out. It's a missed opportunity, and you're putting yourself at risk. Because if your obligatory acts fall short, then the sunnah acts are there to help make up for those deficiencies. But if you don't have any sunnah acts, then you're putting yourself in a position of difficulty. All right, so that's the section on the removal of the janab. So the next section is now the etiquette of tayammum, adab of tayammum. So he begins by saying, if you are unable to find any water after looking for it, or some obstacle prevents you from reaching it, like imprisonment or a wild animal, or the water you have is only enough for your or your companion's drinking need, or the water available is the property of someone who wants to sell it for more than the market rate, or you have an illness or wound that if it comes in contact with water could be life-threatening, then you must wait until the time the obligatory prayer arrives. So the first thing that he begins with is talking about what are the conditions that need to exist in order for a person to be allowed to do tayammum. So all of these things should, these are all reasons why a person would be able to resort to doing tayammum, right? So if none of those reasons exist, then you have to use water. You have to make wudu, right? Using water or ghusl using water. And so the fuqaha, they go into details in terms of, okay, well, what is it considered as in terms of looking for water? How far do you have to go and how long do you look for it, etc. Do you have hope that you'll find it or not? Right? Like what are your impressions? Okay, do you think that the chances of you finding water are nearby or not? So if you're traveling, for example, and you know that you're about to reach a town or a city or something like that, your chances of finding water there are great. And if you can go to that city before the time of the prayer ends, then that's what you should be doing. But if not, and the prayer time is going to end, then the situation differs. So that's the fifth, which we'll talk about that. And so he talks about the obstacles that prevent you from reaching the water, or not having enough water, extra water that would be more and beyond what you need to survive for yourself or for those who are with you. Or even if somebody's selling it and they're selling it at a higher rate, right? You don't have to buy the water from them to make wudu. But if they're selling it at market value price and you can afford it, then you purchase from it and you require them to make wudu, can't make tayammum under those situations or circumstances. So he goes into all that, but then he talks about illnesses or a wound that if water touches it, it could cause more harm or it could be life-threatening. Then he says you must wait until the time of the obligatory prayer arrives. And the reason is because in the Shafi'i method, for performing tayammum, you can only make one fard prayer with that tayammum. And so the point of being able to make that the tayammum, if all the other conditions exist, is that the time of prayer has to have entered. So say, for example, if I'm traveling and it's during the time of duha, right? It's in before dhuhr time. I can't make tayammum for dhuhr prayer because dhuhr prayer hasn't entered yet, right? And so that's why he's saying that you must wait until the time of the obligatory prayer arrives. This is not the case in the Hanafi. In the Hanafi method, you don't have to wait for the time of the prayer to arrive. Then he goes on to say, find clean earth on which there is soft, pure dust. Strike your palms on it, keeping your fingers together, with the intention of making the prayer lawful for you. Now notice the difference in the intention here, that the intention here is istibahat as-salah. It's not rafa al-hadath. It's not removal of the ritual impurity, the state of ritual impurity. It is in order for you to be able to pray, making the prayer permissible. And we talked about the difference between those two intentions in a previous class, that when we're making wudu, that if a person has an issue that, constantly they're losing their wudu, their intention is not going to be rafa al-hadath. It's not going to be to remove the state of ritual impurity, because he keeps breaking rather the intention is ishtibahat, to allow the prayer to be permissible. So here with tayammum, you're not removing the state of ritual impurity. You're only making the acts of worship lawful, because guess what happens as soon as you find water? Your tayammum is no longer valid, and you have to remove the state of ritual impurity, right? Because you have water, you have access to water. So that's why it's a nuance, but the books of fiqh refer to that. Again, subhanAllah, presence of mind, understanding what it is that you're doing and doing things with the purpose. So he says, strike your palms on it, keeping your fingers together with the intention of making the prayer lawful for you, and wipe your entire face with your hands once. You do not need to make the dust reach the roots of your facial hair, thick or thin. So the idea here is that, okay, you find the surface that has dust on it, right? And then with your palms, your fingers together, you strike the earth once, right? Then you rub off any excess dust, and then you wipe the face once, right? And you don't have to like rub the dirt in if you have a beard or whatnot to get the earth to reach it. It's not water. It's not the same thing, right? But rather this is a ritual act that is in place of water because of the excuse that exists. So then the first time, then you wipe the face, but then he goes on to say, then take off your ring. So if you're wearing a ring, you remove the ring. And then it says, strike the earth a second time with your fingers spread out. So the second time, then it's going to be like this, with the fingers spread out. And then it says to wipe your arms. And so the way that you wipe your arms is you start with the fingertips, you come all the way down here to the elbow, and then you come back up the arm, and then you finish with the wiping, and then you do the same with the other arm, right? A single motion, right? Start from the fingertips, go down to the elbows, come around, and then come off the tongue, right? That's the way of performing the tayammum. And so then he says, now wipe your arms, including the elbows, with your hand. If you do not go over the whole area the first time, strike the earth one more time, and wipe the arms until you have gone over the entire area. So the idea is that you've covered the entire arm. Not covered it with dirt, but you've wiped it. That's the idea, is that you wipe the entire arm, right? And then, next, wipe each of your palms with the other, and wipe the spaces between the fingers. So then it's like this. So once you do the arm, right, you've done your face, you do the arms, right, and then you've done your tail, right? So when you bring your hands together, rubbing the palms, and then the fingers go in between, this is the way of tail. That's the sunnah of the Prophet. Now perform one obligatory prayer with this tayammum, along with any voluntary prayers you wish to perform after it. If you want to perform another obligatory prayer, then you must make a new tayammum. Again, this is in the Shafi'i. Right? So with each tayammum, you can only do one obligatory prayer, but you can do as many nafils, you can do as many voluntary prayers as you want, and anything that would be considered as nafil that requires wudu. So such as, for example, reading the Quran. Right? So in my tayammum, I can hold a mushaf, and I can read through a mushaf, through that tayammum. Now, when does the tayammum become invalid or you break it? One is when you do something that would invalidate your wudu, right? So don't think that if you just do the tayammum, then anything can happen and then you don't have to do the tayammum over it. No, the invalidators of wudu will also invalidate your tayammum. So if you use the washroom or you break wind or whatever, the invalidators of wudu, they also invalidate tayammum and you'd be required to do the tayammum again, right? But then the other is that if the time of prayer of the next prayer enters, then your tayammum is invalid, and you have to do the tayammum over again in the Shafi'i. In the Hanafi madhab, it doesn't require that, and you can do one tayammum to do as many obligatory prayers as you want, and you don't have to wait for the time of prayer to enter. But same rule applies in terms of if your wudu is invalidated, right? So if you use the washroom or break wind or whatever, then your tayammum is invalidated, and you still you have to perform the tayammum. Are there any questions about that?
So, you do tayammum
snow is actually a form of water. So what you can do is that you take the snow, gather it, melt it, and then you water.
And then for the other method,
This is Shafi'i.
yeah, for the Shafi'i, for the other method, can you do tayammum even if water is available? That's across the board.
No, usually, yeah, no, it's the requirements are still there in terms of like it's not like an option. this or that. Right, exactly, right? So, no, it's like, this is across the board. I don't know of any madhab that would allow tayammum in the presence of water. There has to be a valid excuse. Or that, a person has an illness, for example, that water would harm them, okay? Those are dispensations or excuses that would allow for tayammum. But kind of like, pick and choose kind of thing, like, I don't feel like making wudu today, therefore I'm going to do tayammum. No, that doesn't. So the next section now is the etiquette for setting out for the mosque, right? So this is now adab al-khuruj ila al-masjid. So now khuruj ila al-masjid is that you're taking steps to go towards the masjid. So he begins by saying, when you have finished your purification, taharati, then he said, pray the 2 rak'ahs of Fajr in your home if dawn has broken. So remember, at the beginning of this section, we're talking about, okay, how do I start my day? This is all about time management. What do I do and how do I start my day? So remember, last time we spoke about the etiquette of waking up from sleep. Okay, so now you've woken up from sleep, you perform your wudu or ghusl, whatever is required, and then you set out for the masjid. Before you do that, you pray your 2 sunnahs of Fajr at home, if the time of Fajr has come. This is what the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do. So the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu is to pray the sunnah prayers at home, specifically and especially the sunnah prayers at home. Right? That to pray those at home and then you go out to the mosque. There are differences of opinion in terms of the other sunnah prayers, whether it's more preferable to do them in the mosque or whether they're preferable to do them in the home. And the scholars differed about that. But we know for sure that the sunnah prayers, the sunnah rak'ahs, the 2 rak'ahs of sunnah before Fajr time, it's best to perform those at home, right? If a person is able to. Now, you basically also make your best judgment, right? So sometimes, for example, in the masajid here, if they pray 15 minutes after the adhan of Fajr, and if you were to stay at home and pray your 2 rak'ahs sunnah of Fajr at home, you might miss the jama'ah, right? So in that situation, instead of go out to the masjid and pray your 2 rak'ahs there, so that you can catch the jama'ah. So then he says, do not fail to pray with the congregation, especially the morning. A prayer in congregation is 27 times better than a prayer alone. And we know this, of course, based on the many hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ that talk about the virtue of praying in Jama'ah. If you are negligent of such a profitable act, then what benefit is there for you in the pursuit of knowledge? So this is one of where it hits at your nerves. This is like one of those, Imam Ghazali giving it to you straight. Like, okay, if you're not doing it, and the Prophet ﷺ has indicated it, and we're still not, praying Fajr in Jama'ah when it's facilitated or when we don't have an excuse, etc. He said, then what benefit is there for you in the pursuit of knowledge? After all, the fruit of knowledge is active. So if you know something, put it into action. That's for all. Every single one of us, right? And this is part of that challenge where it's like, as you're reading this, you're like, right? That hits you. Okay, I haven't, right? Now, I need to change. I need to start getting into the habit. I need to do something that allows me to, act more upon that. Because this, at the end of the day, is what the Prophet said. Now, notice that he's not mentioning here that it's obligatory, because praying in congregation, according to the Shafi'i method, is not wajib. It's not an obligatory act, meaning that if you don't do it without an excuse or sinful, okay, that doesn't apply in the Shafi'i method. Or the other 2 madhahib, the Hanafi and the Maliki. In the Hanbali method, there are opinions that say that it is obligatory, but that's a difference of opinion, and it's a minority opinion. It still does not minimize, or is intended to minimize the bounty and the virtue of going out to pray in the mosque. No, that's something that it should be done. When you walk to the mosque, walk with tranquility and do not rush. On your way, you say, Allahumma inni as'aluka bihaqqi as-sa'ilina alayka wa bihaqqi ar-raghibina ilayka wa bihaqqi man shaya hadha ilayka فإني لم أخرج أشق ولا بطر ولا رياء ولا سمعة بل خرجت اتقاء الطهر وابتغاء مرضاتك فأسألك أن تنقذني من النار وأن تدخلني الجنة وأن تغفر لي ذنوبي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. So this is a supplication that is found in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad as well as the Sunan of Ibn Majah and the Dua al-Kubra of Imam al-Tabarani. And so he said, the Prophet ﷺ, this is a dua that was taught by the Prophet ﷺ. Oh my Lord, I beseech you by the right of those who beseech you, and the right of those who long for you, and the right of this walk of mine toward you. I have not left my home intending insolence, nor in arrogance, nor in seeking to make a show of my actions. Nor intending to make a show of my actions, nor seeking prestige. Rather, I have come forth from my home in fear of your wrath and in search of your satisfaction, your reward. I ask you to save me from the fire, so that we enter paradise, and I ask that you forgive my sins, for truly there is none who forgives sins but you. So you can imagine, if you're doing this, and you're doing this with that state of awareness and consciousness and seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's intentionality, there's purpose in what you're doing, and you make this as your regular habit. This is what you do, right? So it's about being present in everything that you do, in every moment that you're doing. So a lot of times we think, okay, I got to go to the masjid to pray, right? How often do we step outside of our home and we're just thinking, going to the masjid? Here, it's about, well, there's a dua the Prophet ﷺ taught us, and so think about it, learn it, and apply it. And if we say this enough times, then we'll be able to get, used to saying it, but then reflect on it. What is it that you're actually saying in terms of what you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for? You're seeking nearness to Him. You're beseeching Him. You're asking Him, by the right of those who long for Him. You want to be with them. You want to be with the people of taqwa or of righteousness, right? And that you're purifying your intentions. Why are you leaving your house? Are you going to the masjid so that other people can say, oh, mashallah, brother so-and-so goes to the masjid on a daily basis and he's always praying the first row? If that's your intention, and people say that, then you got your rule. It's frightening, but that's the reality of it. So check your intention. Make sure that you're doing it for the right reason. That there's presence. You're not doing it out of arrogance. You're not doing it seeking to make a show of your actions, to show off to others, so that other people can say, oh, mashallah, how righteous a person this person is, so and so. Right? Rather, I've come home, forth from my home, which at times is not easy. Right? Going out, it's cold, it's dark, right? The weather might be difficult, whatever it might be. You're doing this out of, I'm seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His wrath, search of His ridwan, asking Him to save you from the fire and enter you into paradise. Because that's the end result that we want. That's our definition of success and being saved at the end of the day, right? And then forgiveness of sin. So if that's something that we're conscious of and we do it on a consistent basis, right? Then we should have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will give us what it is that we're seeking, but we're taking the lead. And then he goes into the next section, that is Adab Dukhul al-Masjid ila Tulu' al-Shams. So now the etiquette of staying in the mosque until sunrise. So now you're on your way to the mosque, you reach the mosque. Alright. He starts by saying, when you are going to enter the masjid, do so with the right foot. And then say, Oh Allah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa sallam. Allahumma ighfir li dhunubi waftah li abwab rahmati. And so it's, Oh Allah, bless Muhammad and the family of Muhammad and give them peace. Oh Allah, forgive my sin and open to me the doors of your mercy. This is a well-known dua of the Prophet ﷺ that was taught to us. And then he goes on to say, if you see someone selling things in the mosque, say, La arbah Allahu tijarata. That say, Oh Allah, may Allah make your transaction unprofitable. And if you see someone calling out to people about something that has gone missing, say, لا رد الله عليك ضالة, that may Allah not restore what you have lost. This is as the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has commanded. So this is based on hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that is found in Muslim and Imam al-Tirmidhi's collection and and it's Sahih. It is a Sahih hadith. And so when the Prophet ﷺ was teaching people, he's saying that don't take advantage of, when you have a large gathering of people and you're going there and you're doing something that, okay, now a lot of people here, I have some wares I'm going to sell them, right? I'm going to take advantage of that. That the Prophet ﷺ is saying that make your intention straight. The masjid is not a place for selling your stuff, okay? But rather that it is something that is for coming to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Now this is talking about in the masjid itself, in the musalla area, right? We're not talking about outside of the masjid where the things of the where dunya worldly matters can take place, right? But this is talking about inside the masjid of the area of the musalla where people are praying and sitting down and reading Quran. Same thing if somebody, if they lost something, they go in and they say, I'm looking for such and such a thing, right? Or people help me find whatever, right? The masjid is not for that. Inside the musalla area. Outside the masjid, right? Then it's okay. You can put your post up for you have something that you need to get fulfilled or whatever. Then that's a different story. But inside the actual musalla, and that's what it's referring to. It's inside the mosque. It's referring to the prayer area, the masjid itself, rather than the areas outlying, the masjid. But the idea here is also don't be one that is like opportunistic or trying to take advantage of the large gathering of people. Make your intention straight, right? Why are you going to the masjid? You're going to the masjid to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's something that is important to be conscious and aware of. When you have entered the masjid, do not sit down until performing the 2 rak'ah prayer of greeting the mosque, the tahiyyat al-masjid. If you have not already performed the 2 sunnah rak'ahs at Fajr in your home, then performing them will take the place of the greeting prayer. So in the Shafi'i madhab, whenever a person enters into the masjid, whatever prayer that they pray when they first get into the mosque, so say you enter in and you see people that are already praying Jama'ah, they've started the Fajr, and you join them in the Fajr prayer, that's your tahiyyat al-masjid, it counts it. Or if you go in and you only have enough time to do your 2 rak'ahs sunnah of the Fajr prayer because you didn't pray them at home, right? Pray the 2 rak'ahs sunnah of Fajr, those will also count as your tahiyyat al-masjid. So there can be like 2 in 1, so to speak. Whatever prayer that you come into the masjid in order to pray, then that also can count as the tahiyyat al-masjid. Upon completing the 2 rak'ahs, make the intention for i'tikaf, with i'tikaf. And so this is interesting, and this is a beautiful thing. In the Shafi'i madhab, i'tikaf is something that, most people associate i'tikaf with what? Ramadan. Last night of Ramadan, go to the masjid to do i'tikaf. Okay. In the Shafi'i madhab, you can make i'tikaf in the masjid at any time. And it's done simply by intent. So anytime you go into the masjid, you make the intention that this is a spiritual retreat. Now way to sunnah to i'tikaf, right? And so when you do that, then you get the reward of i'tikaf. It doesn't have to be in Ramadan, right? But what's the condition? One, it's in a masjid. It's not in a place like a musalla or something. No, this is a masjid that fulfills the conditions of the masjid, number one. And number two, you're intending your presence in the mosque for however long you're there, you're intending it as i'tikaf. It's a spiritual retreat. Just by having that intention, you get reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that even in the haram of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I don't know if people were able to see this or not. It's no longer there, unfortunately. But when a person would enter into Bab as-Salam, the door that the gate of peace, in order to go towards to greet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the first pillar that you see on your left-hand side, if you were to look up at it, you would see that this is something that the Ottomans did, that they had written in like a nice, like the inscribed inside the marble, Nawaitu Sunnat al-I'tikaf. It was there in the Haram of the Prophet as a reminder. You come into the masjid, make that intention, and you get rewarded that. And it's so simple. Right? All you have to do is just have that plan, that intention of what it is that you're doing, and you get the reward. It's beautiful, right? But that's what this is about at the end of the day, is drawing near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through consciousness, through awareness, through presence in everything that we do, right? And so you can imagine as we're going through this and you read all these different du'as and you think about them and then you reflect upon them, right? They're deep. And it's all about bringing a person into that state of presence and awareness that this is thought, this is worship, this is ibadah, this is act of obedience that you're doing towards Allah, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to draw yourself near to Him. So then you make the intention for I'tikaf. And then he says, make the supplication that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made after the two sunnah rak'ahs of Fajr. And so this is a lengthy supplication that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made. This is a supplication that is found in the collection of Imam Tirmidhi. That that there are some slight differences, but basically this is the supplication, and it's in the collection of Imam Tirmidhi. اللهم إني أسألك رحمة من عندك تهدي بها قلبي وتجمع بها شملي وتلوم بها شعري وترد بها ألفتي وتصلح بها ديني وتحفظ بها غائبي وترفع بها شاهدي وتزكي بها عملي وتبيض بها وجهي وتلقيني بها رشدي وتعصمني بها من كل سوء. O Allah, I ask you for mercy through which you guide my heart, by which you compose my state of disarray, by which you order my disorder, by which you return me to my state of harmony, through which you reform me in my deen, my religion, by which you preserve my inner state and elevate my outer state, through which you purify my deed, illuminate my face, instill in me my guidance, and protect me from all evil. That's the beginning of the dua. What's the person asking for? Rahmah. The mercy of Allah. That's what he's asking. Allahumma inni as'aluka rahmatan min indik. Give me mercy from you that has all of these different impacts and effects on me. Because we cannot get any of this except by the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it's guidance, whether it's order in a state of disorder, whether it's tranquility, whether it's whatever it might be, harmony, what you're seeing, all of that is by the rahmah, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The illumination of your face, or the guidance or the protection from all evil, that's rahmah. Right? And then he goes on. Allahumma inni as'aluka imanan da'iman yubashiru qalbi wa as'aluka yaqinan sadiqan حتى أعلم أنه لن يصيبني إلا ما كتبته علي ورضني بما قسمته. And so, oh Allah, I ask you for everlasting faith. Right? So this is imanan, that is, there's a sense of da'im. It's always there. Everlasting faith. Right? It's felt intimately in my heart. I ask you for yaqeen, true certainty, so that I may know that nothing will befall me except what you have written for me, and make me pleased with what you have allowed. So this is that pillar of faith of being accepting of the qada and the qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a pillar of our iman. Right? I don't know what Allah has written for me, but whatever comes to pass and whatever Allah has destined for me and it plays out, then I acknowledge if it's outside of my control, beyond my control, then I accept it. This is part of the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not, about self-fulfilling prophecies where you do choose bad actions and they say, oh, well, I'm destined for hell. No, that's not what this is talking about. And don't fall into that trap. That's a trap of the shaitan, where people, they use their nest in terms of making excuses for being lazy and doing whatever they want and free reign and all that. Oh, well, I'm destined for hell. That's not what this is teaching us, and that's not what our faith teaches us. But rather, it's the opposite. That you have a sense of iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you will strive and take the right means to achieve what it is that He wants us to do. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. اللهم أعطني إيمانا صادقا ويقينا ليس بعده كفر ورحمة أنال بها شرف الكرامات في الدنيا والآخرة. Oh Allah, bless me with sincere faith. Again, you're asking for iman, sincere faith that is solid, right? And have yaqeen, certainty after which there is no kufr, there's no ungratefulness, there's no doubt, there's no disbelief. And mercy whereby I may receive the honor of your favor in this world and the next. Again, it's all about this measure of success that we see. And then the next. So the dua continues the whole page, right? اللهم إني أسألك الصبر عند القضاء والفوز عند اللقاء ومنازل الشهداء وعيش السعداء والنصر على الأعداء ومرافقة الأنبياء. Beautiful. Oh Allah, I beseech you for patience with the decree, for success in the encounter on the day of judgment, for the stations of the shuhada, the martyrs, and for the life of the fortunate, the su'ada, the people of happiness. People are always looking for happiness, right? Here you're asking for it. Aisha su'ada, you want to be sa'id. Oh Allah, give me the life of the su'ada. True happiness, that lies in the heart. That doesn't lie in anything outside of the heart, in terms of material things, right? And so you're asking for the life of the su'ada, right? And the su'ada here is not just about the dunya. This is akhir. Because the Sa'id is the one in the day of judgment who is the one that is successful and is entering into paradise and the mercy of Allah. That's the Sa'id, right? And this is, when the Prophet ﷺ talked about how the angels, they write whether a person is shaqiyun or Sa'id, whether they're wretched or whether they're of the fortune. That's meaning those who are saved on the day of judgment. And then for assistance against the enemies and for companionship of the prophets, right? I mean, what more could you ask? Being with the righteous, being with the best of people, right? And it keeps going. Allahumma inni unzilu bika hajati wa in ضعف رأيي وقصر عملي وافتقرت إلى رحمتك فأسألك يا قاضي الأمور ويا شافي الصدور كما تجير بين البحور أن تجيرني من عذاب السعير ومن دعوة الثبور ومن فتنة القبور. Oh Allah, I lay before you my need. Because who else is going to fulfill or answer your need other than me? I lay before you my need, even though my perception be weak, my actions insufficient, and I am in dire need of your mercy. I beg of you, O accomplisher of all things, O healer of hearts, as you rescue me, or as you rescue from the midst of the seas, rescue me from the punishment of the fire, the call of destruction, and the torment of the grave. So this is about building that relationship with your Lord in terms of that He is everything, and He has everything, and He gives you everything, and you're in dire need. Because there's nothing that you get except that it's from Allah. There's absolutely no good, there's absolutely no blessing that you get in this world or in the hereafter except that it's from Allah. So the idea here is humble yourself before Him. Understand He is the one who is the source of all of that. Ask Him for it. Humble yourself, humiliate yourself before Him. Be aware of that reality, because that's reality. Whether people acknowledge it or not, or they accept it or don't, believe in it or not, that's reality. And so align yourself with that reality, because He is the one who heals the heart. And just as He rescues people from the midst of the seas, you're asking Him to rescue you from the punishment of the fire, the call of destruction, and the torment of the grave. اللهم وما قصر عنه رأيي وضعف عنه عملي ولم تبلغه نيتي أو أمنيتي من خير وعدته أحدا من عبادك أو خير أنت معطيه أحدا من خلقك فإني أرغب إليك فيه وأسألك يا رب العالمين. And so, O Allah, I ask you for any good of which my perception has fallen short and my actions have been too weak to achieve. which my intentions and hopes have failed to reach, any good you have promised to any of your servants or have given to any of your creatures. For truly I desire this good from you and beg you for it, O Lord of the world. I mean, this should give us an immense sense of hope. Because we always talk about, well, I can't make it. I won't be able to do this or to do that, or to be able to repay Allah for everything that He's given to me, or to give gratitude to Him, right? We're going to fall short. That's our reality. Doesn't matter what we do, we're going to fall short. But when we acknowledge and we say, Ya Allah, I'm doing my best. Whatever little that I can give you, whatever it's worth, Ya Allah, your mercy, Ya Allah, you're the one who you overlook shortcomings. You're the one who forgives sin, right? And so that relationship that's what Allah wants of us, right? He wants that absolute objection, right? That we just feel that like we're in so dire need of it. That's our reality. But when you realize it and you ask for it, that's what Allah wants from us, right? So it's like, I don't have anything to give. This is what the paltry actions that I put forward. They're not worth much, but this is what I can do. But do it. Put in the effort. Show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is Ya Allah. I'm going to fall short, but please, just take whatever I can. Whatever little I can. He's merciful. That's what He wants from you, right? So keep going. Keep striving. Don't give up. Don't lose hope. This should give you hope, right? He is our only hope. He is our only hope. It's so deep. Yeah. اللهم اجعل هادي مهتدي غير ضال ولا مضل حربا لأعدائك وسلما لأوليائك نحب بحبك الناس ونعادي بعداوتك من خالف اللهم هذا الدعاء وعليك الإجابة وهذا الجهد وعليك التكلان وإنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Oh Allah, make us guide and be guided, and do not make us lead astray or be led astray, showing enmity toward your enemies and at peace with your friends, that we love people with your love and are hostile with your hostility toward any of your creatures who have opposed you. So this is talking about al-hubbu lillah wal-bughdu fillah. That this is talking about love for the sake of Allah and hatred for the sake of Allah. We love what Allah loves and we despise what He despises. We despise evil. We despise disbelief. We despise oppression. We despise injustice. That's what this is talking about. And so we love what Allah loves and we detest what Allah detests in that respect. Oh Allah, this is my prayer and its answer is yours to give. This is my effort. This is what I have to put forward. And upon you is all reliance. And we belong to Allah and to Him we are returning. And there is no ability to ward off evil or strength to do good except through Allah, the High, the Mighty. That's the meaning of La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-ali al-azim. That we can't do anything on our own. We don't have independent power, right? It's whatever Allah has given to us. He's the one who gives us tawfiq for anything that we do, right? And we acknowledge that. That's what La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah means. Is that I acknowledge that His, any strength that I have, any power that I have, any good that I'm able to do, it's from Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so sometimes we need to acknowledge and know our weaknesses and our vulnerabilities in order to know the source of our strength. Right? We have to acknowledge our shortcomings, our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities in order to know the source of our strength, which is none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But people who don't see it as such, people who don't acknowledge their weaknesses or their vulnerability, it's not about dhul before people. This is about dhul before Allah. It's about being in that state of lowliness before Allah, not before people. Because Allah has granted the human being dignity. And I am in no position, and I have no right to put myself over other people, thinking that I'm better. I don't have a right to do that. Because anything that I have is from Allah. So what right do I have? How dare I put myself above other people when it's not what I have per se, it's what Allah has given to me. Yes, I take the means. That's what I'm required to do. Obey Allah, leave His prohibitions. That's a requirement. I take the means. But the end result, at the end, it's from Him. He's the one who facilitates and allows that to happen for me. That's providence from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. اللهم يا ذا الحبل الشديد والأمر الرشيد أسألك الأمن يوم الوعيد والجنة يوم الخلود مع المقربين الشهود والركع السجود الموفين بالعهود إنك رحيم ودود وأنت تفعل ما تريد سبحان الذي تعطف بالعز وقال به سبحان الذي لبس المجد وتكرم به سبحان الذي لا ينبغي التسبيح إلا له سبحان ذي الفضل والنعم سبحان ذي القدرة والكرم سبحان الذي أحصى كل شيء. Allah. O Allah, O owner of the firm handhold and the guiding command, I ask you for safety. I ask you for safety on the day of punishment and paradise on the day of eternity with those who are close to you, who have beheld the truth, who bow and prostrate themselves before you, and who fulfill their covenants. Truly you are merciful and loving, and you do what you will. Glory be to the one who is characterized by might, who has declared it. Exalted is the one who is clothed in glory, and who has shown generosity in it. Glory be to the one who alone is worthy of glorification. Glory be to the owner of favor and blessing. Glory be to the owner of power and generosity. Glory be to the one whose knowledge encompasses all things. اللهم اجعل لي نورا في قلبي ونورا في قبري ونورا في سمعي ونورا في بصري ونورا في شعري ونورا في بشري ونورا في لحمي ونورا في دمي ونورا في عظامي ونورا من بين يدي ونورا من خلفي ونورا عن يميني ونورا عن شمالي ونورا من فوقي ونورا من تحتي. اللهم زدني نورا وأعطني نورا واجعل لي نورا. What a beautiful God. Oh Allah, grant me light in my heart and light in my brain, light in my hearing, light in my seeing, light in my hair, light in my skin, light in my flesh, light in my blood, light in my bone, light before me, light behind me, light to my right side, light to my left side, light above me, light below me. Oh Allah, increase me in light, give me light, and make me light. What is light? It's guidance. It's to be able to see and witness Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the nur samawati wal ard. To be able to see His light and any source of light in terms of that which brings you near to Him. Because in the absence of light, you have darkness. And so we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to surround us by His light and to allow us, this is nur basir, right? This is the light of inner insight, right? That your sight, you have basar, but then your heart has basira. Your eyes have sight, but your heart has insight. And that's what it is that we're asking is to Allah to give us that light, the insight. That just like as I require light in my physical eye to be able to see what's around me, I require light in my heart to have that sense of reality and to connect myself with it, that sense of inner spiritual insight. That's basira. That requires nur, because otherwise our hearts remain in darkness. And that's what we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give. And so that entire supplication, it's subhanAllah. I mean, it's weighty, right? And so then he goes on in the next page. So he says, when you finish supplicating, do not occupy yourself with anything except the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glorification or the recitation of Quran until the time of the obligatory prayer that comes. So I'll stop there. We won't be able to finish this section today. But then he goes into speaking of the adhan and what to say after the adhan. So all of this is right before the adhan. So you can imagine what's your day going to be like if this is how it should. Right? I mean, with that, this is 1 hour that we've been here and we've been reading through this and reflecting together on it, right? What's your day going to be like if this is how you should? You're going to have a completely different perspective. Like your outlook for the entire day is going to be so different, and it's going to be shaped by what it is that you begin the day. Right? That is, this is, if we begin our day like this, on a daily basis, right, then we're going to have a much better understanding that whatever happens to us during our day, right, we're going to have that understanding of we're okay so long as we have that connection. That's what this is giving, that perspective. It's okay. We're here, we live in the world, we don't live for the world, right? But why are we? Where is that purpose being fulfilled? What is that purpose that we actually serve? And so just by reading through these du'as and reflecting on it during these times, it's deep. And that's going to put our hearts in a much better condition. But don't think that you just do it once and then that's it. We've got, no, this is like every day, it's a state of being, right? We continually do this. And if we continually do that, then we'll be in good hands in that ta'ala, so long as we're always seeking it, so long as that's our perspective. Anything that I do during the day, it's based on it, shaped by this morning act. And it's not easy, right? There is a struggle, right? It's not easy for us to be able to kind of to do that and to continue. But this is what, the Prophet said, this is the day. This is how it started. And this is, when we're reading this through Imam al-Ghazali and the righteous people, this is their life. This is their life. And what's the result of that going to be? In the Akhirah, but imagine how much we're missing out on. That, clearly haven't been doing. How many missed opportunities have I seen that I've missed? Again, not to feel sad. I'm saying, don't get sad, get serious. Don't get down and depressed. Get determined. Right? So it's like, no, I can do something about this. The fact that we're able to read through these books, that's a blessing from Allah. The fact that we're here listening to this and reading through it and going through it, that, inshallah, it's a sign that Allah He wants us to go in that direction. Right? But then it's up to every single one of us individually. What are we going to do? How are we going to do? So I'll conclude with that. And if there are any questions, then we can answer them.
You mentioned like that part on the beginning. So can we make the same if we're praying a simple sajda and make that intention for that? Or is that a function that
No, I mean, so in terms of when it goes out like the Fajr prayer and then praying in Jama'at, I mean, we know that, that the preference is for men to go to pray in the Jama'at and for the sisters to be praying at home. So you can do the same practice at home, absolutely. Right? Again, the point is just having that state of presence, right? Now, I understand that, we live in very difficult and challenging times. And, I mean, if there are sisters who they feel that they have a need to go to the masjid in order to get that spiritual upliftment, right, that they don't have at home, then go to the masjid. It's okay. I mean, there's not a prevention for sisters doing that, if that's the case. If sisters are able to, do that at home and they're able to get that spiritual upliftment, then alhamdulillah, great, do that, right? But we live in very challenging times, and I don't want, sometimes some of our sisters, they might think, but it's not fair, and why do the men go out and we have to stay? It's not about that, right? But, I mean, we live in very challenging, confusing times, right? We know, I mean, the Prophet, he taught that, yes, this is something that is preferable for our sisters. But in times of need, I mean, if a person is starving spiritually, and the way to get that fulfillment is by going to the masjid, then go to the masjid, right? Like, don't take it, in the opposite way. Oh, I'm not supposed to go, and therefore I just sit home and sulk and get down and depressed, right? No, I mean, if you're you're able to do this at home, by all means, do it at home, and and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for increase in terms of the light, in terms of guidance, in terms of reward, right? Allah, He will give it to everyone, but we just simply take the right means for it. What do you mean? Right. That's fine. No, that's fine. So the aspect of in terms of so after Fajr is different, right? That that's one of the times where nafil prayer is not it becomes makruh, right? But if it's like a makeup or something like that, then it's okay. But one of the things that when you enter into a masjid, so even if it's in the time that where prayer is prohibited or offensive, so after Fajr or after time or after Asr, for example, right? Say I pray Asr prayer at home and then I go to the masjid and I want to pray Maghrib, but it's still Asr time. I walk into the masjid. I'm not supposed to pray in that time, but because I'm walking into the masjid, that is the reason for performing Tahiyyat al-Masjid. And so therefore I would pray Tahiyyat al-Masjid, and it's not considered as makruh, right? And so the same would apply for Fajr. But does that answer the question? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك والعصر ان الانسان الا الذين امنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد في الاولين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد في الاخرين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الاعلى الى يوم الدين اخر